because we're writing Hollywood scripts now based on fucking memes, I guess we're going to say that these two movies have something in common as far as the focus on family or whatever. Let's just go ahead and talk about Fast 9 or F9 or F9 the Fast Saga or Fast and Furious 9 or whatever the fuck you want to call it. There's so many movies now the titles are just multiple choice apparently. So as I've stated, as we've gone through each Fast and Furious movie now, I was actually a relatively big fan up to 7, where I really love the first movie. I really love 7. One of the two of them might be my favorite, probably 7, but both of them would be at the top, and I like Tokyo Drift a lot. And the others in between are fine. I know a lot of people love Fast 5, and Fast 5 is kind of the culprit as far as where we are now, because it's kind of when it started getting really over the top. And now we've reached this point. I really, really, really don't like the 8th movie, and Hobbs and Shaw was just a complete fucking disaster that never should have happened. It has pretty much no redeeming qualities whatsoever. So, that's the mindset that I went into when I went into this one. Where I am just, I mean, I get what they're trying to do, but I'm just kind of over this whole let's just do it for the means now thing. And there was something that was discussed when I can't remember if we were talking about the 8th movie or Hobbs and Shaw or what or both. But something was being teased about where can we go from here to go as over the top as possible, and and when they think they're going as big as they possibly can, it's weird the directions this movie goes, and still feels extremely predictable because of bullshit. So, and once again, I know they're made to not be taken seriously and shit like that. I know you can say that till your fucking face is blue. That doesn't necessarily change the the levels of stupidity and who the fuck cares anymore that we've reached. But I think the thing that bugs me particularly about this one, I will say right away, this one is better, probably significantly better than 8 and Hobbs and Shaw. But that's a very low bar. So, let's... I guess here's the thing, is, you talk about, where the movies are up to this point, and there's some people that genuinely say, why can't it just be about, racing again? Like, why, now that we've gone really high, why don't we, come back down, instead of trying to go as high as we possibly can into all the predictable directions, just based on the memes. The writers are just fucking following the memes and going from there. And so you might wonder, could they, pull it off if they went back to the roots of the story and went back to the first one and stuff like that, stealing DVD players or what the fuck ever. And this movie proves that they probably could, because a fair amount of this movie are flashbacks, because we got to set up John Cena's character as Dom's brother, and we see how they fell apart and how he became a villain and stuff like that, and basically where they started from. And what's really, I don't know that you would think this about a Fast and Furious movie unless you're on the idea that it would be better if they went back to what they used to be. This movie proved that a prequel would have probably been a much better idea, because the scenes with young Dom and young, whatever the fuck Cena's character's name was, Jacob, they really kind of bring back the vibe of the first few movies or so, and that's kind of where I wanted to stay. And it's and it's not even, Vin Diesel and Cena. It's two guys playing the young versions of them. For some reason, the young Cena is comically smaller. But it's which actor has the most power here, I wonder. Which is why Dwayne Johnson isn't here anymore. Because he couldn't put up with that shit. Nor should he. But, the thing here, though, is that we do have... Because we had a very talented director in F. Gary Gray, who did the 8th movie, which was terrible. And as we saw with Be Cool, you know, as talented as F. Gary Gray is, maybe he shouldn't be given sequels to movies that are already, like, pre-existing franchises or whatever. Um, so, we bring back Justin Lin, who did, what was it? He did Tokyo Drift, and then I think he did 4 through 6, because James Wan did 7. And it's like, okay, that's a good place to be. 3 to 6. It's like, yeah, with him back into it, maybe we will kind of get back into a decent territory where it's not overblown for the sake of being overblown, and it's just trying to appease the memes or whatever. Well, it appears Justin Lin has gone to the dark side. But, like I said, the flashback scenes are the movie I ended up wanting to see. But it's not near enough of the movie, unfortunately. If they had done, like, this movie could have been, and I could easily see them using this as a selling point. This movie could have easily been The Godfather 2 of the franchise. Have the present day story and the flashback. It's kind of kind of split up evenly. And it's like, maybe you would have had something there. And maybe putting a little more focus into the flashbacks would have been like, you see some of the bullshit in the present day scenes, and it's like, oh, we can cut some stuff out. Well, apparently nobody said, hey, let's cut some stuff out, because the movie's like 2.5 hours, because that's what these need to be. So, going on that, we're getting more and more meta even before we get to the shit. Where we have basically Tyrese going on a whole... Well, there's a whole setup with Tyrese where he's always the one that's kind of getting all fucked up, and he's the one that's in all the wrong situations. He was the one in 7, where he was just flying around on his parachute while everybody else was doing the action scene. And I love that. He's a great comedic character. Tyrese is very funny in his role, and it's great. Like, as far as being the comedy relief, he and Ludacris together, I love that matchup. They're great. But they're really, really ramping up the Tyrese's character as a complete idiot thing. And they're doing this whole thing where he's the one that's bumbling around now to get to where it's getting. He might as well be like, you know, a really over the top Home Alone villain. He might as well be Marv at this point. And there's a point in time where they eventually just use this as a joke to make it look like he's dead, even though we know he's not dead, because who the fuck in this franchise is dead? The only person I can think of off the top of my head that is actually dead in this series is fucking Johnny Tran, the villain in the first movie. And Matt Schultz, who came back for the 5th movie, who was in the first one. Those seem to be the only 2 people that have died and stayed dead, but Matt Schultz I could actually see coming back, honestly. They'd work their way into it. And honestly, it wouldn't even surprise me if, like they keep building up, like, some surprise villain or whatever. Like, wasn't there, like, a tease in Hobbs and Shaw that there was some, like, unseen villain? Like, it honestly wouldn't surprise me if fucking Johnny Tran is still alive, and nobody in this franchise has ever died. So... but anyway, where was I going with this? Yes, Tyrese's whole thing, where they have built up that he appears to die for a second. They even give him a little humorous bell toll when this happens on the soundtrack. But of course he's alive, and this prompts Tyrese to have a whole like, I was thinking in my head, like, okay, so we're playing up that they're literally invincible now. Like, that was the literal thought in my head, was, we're playing up they're invincible, like, I guess that's gonna be the joke. And to drive that point home, sure enough, the very next scene is Tyrese having a whole monologue saying, I genuinely think we can't die. Like, I've literally been shot, yet I somehow don't have bullet holes in my body. They're in my clothes, but they're not in my body. Like, we are literally, and he stretches it out just enough for Ludacris to jump in and say, you're talking about being invincible. And then they make fun of him. Despite the fact that that's clearly what's going on here, it's played up that this is this is something to make fun of him for saying. He's the only one that knows he's in a movie, I guess. Actually, that's not true. Charlize brings it up later. They're still trying to do the meta thing where Charlize is basically Hannibal now, after the fucking 8th movie. And they've got her in the glass case, and she's, you know, taunting the new villains, and she says, you know, if this were a movie, this is the position we would be in, or something. And whatever. Like I don't, and it's clearly their way of trying to go around things, but it's this weird combination because they're clearly accepting the fact that there are no rules in these movies whatsoever. Yet at the same time, they're trying to be meta and dance around this and try to say, "Oh, this is the reason for this," and it's like, you make up your mind. Are you trying to put in legitimate things, or do you legit not care? Like, which one are you going for? Because you seem to really be trying to play up the, hey, we're just doing whatever now, and that's why we're so fun, in quotes. But then they'll turn right around and say, oh, we have to have an explanation for this. And it's always some stupid shit. And maybe it being a stupid explanation is part of the fun. But, like, okay, so there's no explanation whatsoever for the fact that Tyrese can be shot and have bullet holes in his clothes but not his body. But then they'll turn around and say, John Cena is Vin Diesel's brother? What? Oh, they're mixed bloodlines. And it's like, if you were really committing to this, why not just have no explanation whatsoever for how Vin Diesel and John Cena can not look anything like each other whatsoever and be brothers? That would be much more in line with this. But no, they keep kind of reverting back, like they're saying, like, they're afraid to commit. They're too committed to being stupid, but at the same time, there's portions where they're afraid to committing that much. It's weird, and they keep going back and forth on that. So there's not really a sincerity either way. They're clearly not trying to be a good movie, but as far as like trying to be entertaining and by dropping any sort of whatsoever, and I'm not even one of those people. Like there are videos on top of videos of me saying not everything has to be completely logical depending on the world that the movie sets up. I'm completely aware of that. And there are plenty of movies that I will gladly let get away with it. But that this one seems to flip-flop and try to, at times, actually take itself seriously. It's like it wants to be the stupidest shit ever on purpose, but then really wants to drive home the family thing. And the thing about it is Vin Diesel's the kind of guy, when you hear him talk about this, and throw in the Paul Walker factor, like throw in the fact that there's a real life situation here that has really brought this cast together in a really serious way and made them seriously close to each other. I genuinely cannot tell anymore if the family thing is the meme or it's actually trying to be sincere. There is no... That line is completely blurred at this point. And I don't know, like, how are you supposed to take it? Like, okay, because here's one way or the other. It's like, if you look at it from both ways, if it's trying to be completely over-the-top stupid and embrace memes and make fun of Dom being obsessed with family, then you're on the wrong side of it if you take it sincerely. Which, like I said, there's clearly a real sincerity here, especially when you bring Brian into the equation, and the way they handle that. Which I'm actually a big fan of. The fact that... How they handle Brian and the fact that he's not being written out completely. And not being, like, killed off or anything like that. Like, they're wanting to keep Brian's presence here. And there's something really seriously poignant about that. But, like, how can you take it that way if it seems so obsessed with the idea of saying, like, hey, we're embracing the memes, we're really driving the family thing home to make it, funnier or whatever. But now let's go on the other side of that. Let's say the movie's taking the family thing 100% seriously. A majority of your audience is laughing at it now. So, there's no... It's just a lose-lose scenario. I mean, if you want to be optimistic, you can call it win-win, I guess. But I definitely see it as lose-lose, because these are definitely things... Like I said, especially when you're bringing the real-life aspect into it, the whole family thing being a meme doesn't feel completely right. So, I don't know what the fuck's with that. What the hell is this? There's also stuff like, there's a sequence involving a bridge, where it's one of those really rickety fucking Indiana Jones bridges, and even though it's like completely collapsed, Dom is able to like Dom or somebody is able to drive up it. as it's collapsing. And it's like, this is normally the shit where I wouldn't care too much, but it's like, I think it's the fact that we've already established where the right amount of over the top is in this series. Like I said, it seemed to really start with 5 when we kind of started going really big, and then 6 we had like, flying headbutts and endless runways and stuff like that. And that's another defense I throw at this series, like the endless runway at the end of 6. And it's like, everybody's like, oh my god, that runway's so... Like, every time 6 is brought up, you have some fucking dumbass over here thinking for the first time ever they're saying, oh, that runway was so long, wasn't it? And it's like, look at the fucking movie, you idiot. It's like, why are you so obsessed with how long this runway is? Look at this movie. See, that's where I can say, like, what do you think you're going into with this movie? And I feel like 7 is where we... Like, 7 was just the right sweet spot of over the top. The Rock fucking flexing out of his cast. The whole... Like, the way the cars moved in that whole sequence where they, like, parachute down. That was, like, the perfect... Like, that was the peak. Like, this is where... I think that's why I hated 8 so much. It's like, 7 was such a peak in over the top, whereas, like, 8 would have been a good starting point to kind of start coming back down and kind of bring us full circle to where we were at the start of this. And I'm really not into this whole thing at all of trying to keep going as high as we can. Because it's just not interesting or fun anymore, because you just know it's coming now. Like, what's even... Like, I mean, how like, the whole direction this movie goes. Like, it's been out long enough I could probably just say it, but just for the sake of, not doing spoilers or whatever, the direction this movie goes was so played up before it was even written into a script. It's like the fact that they can go that over the top, and was anybody surprised to see that by now? Because the joke had been made so heavily, like I said, before this movie even existed. And it's... And they're trying to acknowledge it. There was the whole thing where, like, Tyrese is taking us through the whole series, basically, in a big monologue. He's basically complaining about what they've been through, which is kind of funny. But then he gets to 8, and he's like, I'm not even going to go into the submarine. And it's like, thank you, Tyrese, I don't fucking want to either. Like, because that's where things started really plummeting and becoming less fun. And it's like, it's the Sharknado bullshit. Which I'm so fucking tired of talking about my feelings on, which is that whole idea of... The problem with the whole Sharknado thing, which is the directions these movies are going... Like, there's no question that's the directions these movies are going at this point. Is that if you want to be something that over the top, you have to be... That only happens organically when somebody is setting out to make an actual good movie, and they fail miserably, and it becomes good in spite of itself. Like, I don't really subscribe to the whole so bad it's good thing, because that just doesn't make any sense to me. But the idea of something... I know it's basically the same wording, but it's like... It's just different wording for the same thing. But I mean, the whole idea of somebody really, really trying to make what they think is a great movie, and it just fails horribly. But the fact that you can see the effort, it somehow... Like, something comes out of it. Like, something manages to just rise out of its corpse a little bit, and it grabs people. And that can only happen by accident. Like, ever. It can only work if it's by accident. I really strongly feel this and can't think of something off the top of my head that I feel personally that would contradict that. Because I know this is all opinion-based at the end of the day. But, and then you bring in the Sharknado bullshit where they try to intentionally do that. And it's pathetic and desperate and try-hard and just doesn't work at all. And that's starting at 8... and then Hobbs and Shaw, and now 9, we are in Sharknado territory, where anything that's over the top, anything that's so, crazy and stupid it's actually good, none of it's an accident. It is all... They're playing the people that want this like a fucking fiddle. And it's... Yeah, it almost feels a tiny bit malicious. Because it's like, I mean, you could say, oh, they're giving the fans what they want. But it's like the fact that even the fans are saying, oh my god, I can't believe we've gotten to this point. Shut the fuck up. Yes, you can believe it. Because you've been saying it this whole fucking time since we've been getting this over the top. There is no surprise to where this goes whatsoever. Which means there's no fucking fun to it. There's no holy shit element. It's like, yes, obviously it was blueprinted far in advance, this is where we are now. And who goddamn gives a fuck? And I know it sounds weird the way I'm saying this, because I don't hate this movie the way I hated the last two. The last two being Hobbs and Shaw and 8. You know, going, you know, further into it, like, how the reason I was so mad at the 8th movie, especially, like, even taking out the over-the-top nature of taking out the submarine bullshit, or whatever the hell it was, the thing that was really driving me crazy about 8, and the thing that I really, really dwelled on, was the Shaws becoming heroes. And all I could say when I was doing my video for the 8th movie was, why are we doing this to Han? Why? Like, how can we do this to Han? Why are we basically forgetting? Especially 7, because 7 is, like, the best movie. And the thing that really drove 7 was how, like, over half of it felt like a revenge movie. When they were, like, at the funeral, and fucking Statham drove by, and, you know, Don was like, we got one more funeral to go to. And it was this whole thing, and Shaw was a really great... The way he would just pop up like the shark in Jaws, and just show up wherever they were, out of nowhere, while you got this whole other plot with Jaimin going on. And it was the perfect amount of chaos. And had that driving force, that tease at the end of 6 that was really cool when they first revealed Statham. Was the one that crashed Han and blew him up, supposedly. And it just drove me fucking insane. Both Shaws are like heroes now. What the fuck? And so, because that was the thing, was revenge was coming from both sides of 7. It was like, you know, they threw Luke Evans off the plane, so that's why he's pissed off, and he blew up Han because they threw Luke Evans off the plane. There's so many things coming to force here. And even the scene, like, talking about how, like, 7 is the perfect amount of over-the-top. And, like, Dom one-liners and shit like that, when he's like, you know, the streets always win, and he, like, fucking collapses in the concrete. And it's like, that's the level. That was the peak level. That's exactly where the height of this should have been. We should not have gone any higher than that. Or attempted to go any higher than that. And then you basically retcon everything from... Like, everything that made 7 good, that was driving 7. You retcon that by, it's like, oh, they're heroes now, who gives a fuck about Han? We don't, you know, yeah. So, now it's very heavily advertised that Han's not actually dead. Because we're in this franchise, remember? So, here's the thing. By the way, with Luke Evans, like, being fine after being thrown off that plane, is, like, everybody that flew off that plane alive now, or what? I don't know. Gal Gadot hasn't come back yet, but, you know, give it fucking time. Like, that's not even what we're bringing up, it's like, give it fucking time. They've got one more movie. So, here's the thing. So, it's obviously not a surprise that Han is not dead, and they're bringing Han back. Even though it's really late in the movie, they still build it up, and build it up, and build it up, like it's this huge surprise, despite the fact that he's on the fucking poster. Like, I don't even watch trailers anymore, because it's fun to see everything in its natural habitat the first time you're seeing it. And it's like, even that, they put on the fucking poster, so, whatever. But the thing here is that, okay, now we're not only... we're getting farther and farther and farther away from what made 7 good. Because it's like, oh, well, now that Han's not actually dead, will that make the pill that the Shaws are good now easier to swallow? No. It's still getting dumber, because they don't even... Maybe there's, like, really intricate details here that were going over me because I was just too sick of the movie by this point. but I don't remember us getting a whole lot as far as why this needed to happen, how exactly it happened. Does Shaw think he killed him? There's a very confusing end credit scene. Like I said, I have no idea what Shaw knows and what he doesn't, what Shaw thinks he's done and what he doesn't. Um, why Mr. Nobody would do this, I don't know. It doesn't. It's only so that they can bring Han back. Like, they didn't even care to really establish that. And I'm sure there will be people that just chalk that up to, oh, it's one of these movies. Why are you looking for logic? Because of Seven. Because Seven was built on all of this. That's why. And Seven was like... I'm just going in circles now. I would like to think you get the point. So they're basically... Yeah. They're tainting their previous much better entries. That's what the problem is. That's what the problem is at the end of the day. So, I don't know. It's not even fun anymore to see the old cast members. Like, I loved... Like, I was going crazy in 7 when we heard the song from Tokyo Drift. And Lucas Black came back. He came back for like a second, but it was like, hey, he's still here. It feels like, we're all kind of coming together. All the movies are coming together. And they have the Han connection and stuff like that. Which apparently doesn't matter. So, and Bow Wow comes back. And it's like, we see them together again. And it's like, oh, we're really bringing stuff back now. Great. But given that Lucas Black and Bow Wow's participation in this is the jumping off point for the direction we go, I don't know how thrilled about it I am anymore. So, yeah. So, I don't know what else. There's really not much to talk about the movie-wise, because the stupid decisions made otherwise... Like, that's how much it matters, I guess. And, as far as Cena being the villain, I didn't even try to get invested in that, because we know this series. We know where that's going to go. We knew where that was going to go before we even walked into any of... Like, even the most devoted followers of this franchise that, hang on the every moment of what happens, knew the direction Cena was going to go when they walked into this. So, that's not even worth bringing up. I did think it was interesting. Like I said, I'm really digging the way they're handling Brian. Especially when they bring Jordana Brewster back. Because even though Jordana Brewster is, like, a terrible, terrible actress... it didn't feel like she was shoehorned into this movie. It made sense, because to be perfectly honest with you, I may or may not have forgotten that she was Dom's sister. Despite how many times I've seen the first movie over and over and over again. We're so far into the franchise now, and I've stopped giving a fuck about the connections to the characters. It was like, oh, what is she doing back here? And then she's like, seen as my brother too, and it's like, oh yeah. It's like, okay, so it makes perfect sense that you're here then. Okay. And so, there's that. I guess that's a compliment. That might be as close as we get. I don't know. So, yeah, at the end of the day, I'm just not into this anymore. That's a lot of words to say. I'm just not into this anymore. I'm really over this. I've been over this for 4 years ago is when we got 8. Then 7 was in 2015. That was 6 years ago. It's a long time to be over this franchise that won't fucking die. And not only will it not die, it keeps expanding on itself with this Hobbs and Shaw bullshit. So, yeah. I don't know about anybody else, but this movie is exactly what the fuck I thought it was. The only thing that caught me by surprise was how much I wanted more of the flashbacks, and how I wished that was the movie. But, that's too much to ask for this. I'm not, like, that's not the, like, they're trying to do what the fans ask for, but they're listening to the wrong fucking fan. They're not listening to the fans that say, hey, can we just do the racing thing? Like, is that so hard? No, they want to listen to the people that are... I'm not even entirely sure it's fans that they're listening to. I'm really not sure if the people that, do the memes, that make the movies into the memes, and the fans, I'm not even entirely sure those are intersecting. Because there's... I know you can make fun of something out of love, I know, but it's... If that's the case, they're killing their own franchise. They're killing the franchise that they love single-handedly. They apparently have the power to do that because the writers are just that fucking lazy. This is what they're doing now. They're looking up fucking... I'm done with this. We're going in circles. We've been going in circles for a while now, so I'm done with this. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and interrupt myself here for a second before I go into In the Heights. I just finished doing that video just now, and I realized that I say something at the end of it that I probably should have said right here, which is, it might seem like that I have, like, really kind of a lukewarm reaction and a not as passionate reaction to In the Heights as I probably could have. And, yes, the conclusion I come to is that I didn't get to see it in a theater like I really wanted to because our theater isn't using all of its auditorium still, and things are getting pushed out quicker. And the weekend I was going to go to see it in the theater, it was already gone. So I had to resort to HBO Max, which probably doesn't give near the amount of impact that it that it could have had, and show the spectacle in the way that it really could have. So basically what I'm saying is what I'm about to say in this review that I just shot for In the Heights probably isn't have much validity at all without having seen it on a theater screen. So if you want to hear me ramble through thoughts on In the Heights, that would probably change significantly if I were to see it again, especially on a bigger screen. Have at it, I guess. But yeah, so this is that review with this. Let's go into In the Heights. In the Heights, which is a movie I was somewhat excited for because I only just introduced myself to Hamilton last year, and that filmed version that Disney Plus put out ended up being my favorite movie of last year. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen, and it blew my fucking mind completely. It absolutely, completely lived up to the hype, which seemed like it would have been impossible, but somehow, some way, Hamilton lives up to the hype. I learned. So, we're going back a little bit in Miranda's career, and with this, and despite how much I took to Hamilton, I didn't really explore Into the Heights in any way. I knew this movie was coming, but I didn't really look... So I had no idea what this was. I had no idea what the story was. I hadn't heard any of the songs. I knew really nothing about it whatsoever, except that it was Miranda's thing. He didn't write the book for this one, unlike Hamilton, but the music and lyrics and all that are all very, very, very much him. And obviously he, among a couple of other familiar faces, have cameos here, and it is... Am I under the impression that he played Usnavi in the show? I'm thinking so. But he is now Anthony Ramos, who we've seen in a few movies now, and also we know from Hamilton. But as far going into this, I was basically trying to piece together like what it was going to be, like what it was going in. And I probably should have made myself a little aware, so I kind of knew. Because with musicals, it just kind of really can go one way or the other with me. I can either not care about it at all, or it can be one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. I'm very on opposite sides as far as musicals. It can be one drastic reaction or the other. And I was really interested because John M. Chu is the director, and while he certainly has had some dreadful things on his resume, he actually seemed like a really good fit for this, for two different reasons. Number one being the Step Up movies, which we've talked about a number of times on this very channel. The Step Up movies are obviously dreadful for the most part, but the choreography has always kind of made up for them. Like, the choreography is so good, it actually makes you forget how, like, shit the movies themselves are. Or at least, you know, a portion of the movies are that aren't the choreography and the dancing and all that. And then, obviously, they've been really playing up that he also did Crazy Rich Asians. And so you take the, you know, great choreography that he's known for, and you take the family dynamic that was present in Crazy Rich Asians, and you put those two things together, Yeah, great choreography and family dynamic. That's basically what this is. um, and I also found it interesting going into it when Usnavi's introduced, and we see what he does, and we see the community and all that. And I thought it was, and obviously we're in New York, and there's a heat wave that's going to cause this blackout any day now. And I was thinking like if this wasn't a musical, it would basically be a cross between Do the Right Thing and Clerks. Interestingly enough. But then throw in this massive, massive spectacle of a musical into that, and you have a really interesting and unique combination. And it's especially interesting because we have these really like this is the thing where it's like I felt like I could have maybe introduced myself to it a little more before going into the movie, because some things kind of caught me off guard, because we get these little over the top moments. Like we get obviously we're getting over the top moments throughout, but I mean like stuff like the smaller moments, like when he uses his foot to turn a manhole cover like a turntable, and it's like one of the first things that happens, and it was like, all right. And then there's something like when he does the oh shit, what is the other thing? The mannequin heads with like the wigs on them during the number in the salon, and these heads like come to life and turn and react. What I think is really interesting about that, as far as playing up the spectacle, and it's like I said, it's like I said, it's the small moments like that, despite how big everything else is, where it's such an interesting. Like I was talking about, the important thing in Hamilton to me, I thought, was the fact that I'd never seen anything like it, like a combination of all those things. And it's like when you see these moments, like the manhole cover slash turntable, or like the mannequin heads that move, that feels jarring, despite everything else. Is it's like this whole heightened aspect of the fact that the movie is it feels so grounded otherwise in regards to its setting and the characters and what's going on here. Where, like I said, if this wasn't a musical, it would feel a lot like a Spike Lee movie, like Crooklyn or something, or like I said, Do the Right Thing even, and just focusing on like the community and the characters and stuff like that. But yeah, of course, it is also this really massive spectacle with numbers that go big in ways you really couldn't see coming. When you think about like kind of talking about this scene in the middle, the 96,000 number, where it's a number basically just kind of starts off with this very relatable thing, where they find out how much the ticket's worth and the fact that somebody has apparently won, but nobody knows who. And you have everybody in the vicinity talking about, if it's them, what they would do. And the way they're able to take something that you can imagine a conversation you have with anybody, and that whole thing about just like fantasizing what you would do with a certain amount of money, and the way this just builds and builds into what's essentially like a Busby Berkeley bit, like a whole number from Footlight Parade or something, which is crazy, or like an Esther Williams thing or something. And it's like that's the kind of thing it does, where like it kind of sets up everything in like these really grounded manners, and these real interactions that you can imagine, put the characters in this really real place, and then the way it just kind of expands on that into this really big thing is where it feels like. And obviously, because musicals since the beginning of time have been just like taking little mundane things or whatever and then turning them into musical numbers. It's like essentially it's a running joke at this point. But the way this does it feels just a little more different, where it feels especially grounded, when you look at the characters and the way they interact and where they are in their lives. And then the way that it does, especially what a musical is intended to do, is it takes an emotion and then just completely and totally shows it in the most exaggerated way possible. And that's where it really kind of goes into is the spectacle of it, because I will say that I don't know, like, if you have to compare this with Hamilton, which I'm sure people will do and have done endlessly, I would say that the Hamilton songs play better by themselves. Not as far as the show, but as far as like these two musicals themselves and the song lists themselves. I feel like the songs in the Heights need the context and need the visual and need the spectacle, whereas, the songs in Hamilton you can just listen to at any particular time, by themselves or whatever. Um, so I do think the songs in Hamilton are significantly stronger, um, but still, with that context and with the spectacle of it, everything is as grand as it should be. Like the whole thing of like the fireworks number. Like, I don't know that I can imagine listening to a song by itself that just says "Look at the fireworks." But when you see the fireworks with it, then there's something extremely, jubilant about it and enormous, and it really takes you to the heart and the emotion of where these scenes are coming from in their full context. And that's where it's the combination of all the things together that has to be working together for this one. And when they are, it really takes you there. Um, and you look at some of the particular character dynamics. Nina is interesting. Nina's a character that kind of feels like her story almost feels like a sequel to a story we didn't see, where she's coming back from college after having dropped out, and now she's got to tell her dad, Jimmy Smith's, what happened, and this is going to kind of be a bit of a ripple effect, for the people of this community. And while she's also got something going on with Benny, who is Corey Hawkins' character, and their scenes are extremely well done, especially their last number towards the end, where it's some people might call it the Inception number, but it's stuff like Astaire and Kelly have been doing forever, where they have those dance bits where they defy gravity. But it's like, even in 2021, with all the not just musicals but like sci-fi movies we've seen, I still found myself watching this number towards the end when they were dancing on the side of the building, and thinking like, how did they shoot that? And it's like I love so much, to be so to know so much about what happens behind the scenes, and to still be able to see scenes in movies that make me say, how the hell did they do that? When it's like it's techniques that you're aware of, but it's still just something. It's still so sort of mind blowing how it's executed. That it still manages to blow your mind somehow. So I'm very happy about that. I am not entirely sure how I feel, because I have seen... I could just get a sense of this from watching it before I even looked anything up. The actress playing Nina, Leslie Grace, I want to say is her name. I hope I have that right. Has been getting a lot of praise, and a lot of people say that she manages to almost make the movie all her own. I don't she is very good. There are some moments where it gets particularly sincere that I don't know that entirely ring true for me personally. There's one particular moment where she's hanging out with Benny, and she just kind of stops, and she goes to the fence, and she says, everything goes silent. She's like, I just want to listen to my block. And I don't know if there's too much earnestness to it or what it is, but it almost kind of felt like, because I don't think she comes from the original show or anything, as far as I know, what little research I did. But it kind of felt like that sort of, the whole idea of being on stage and your emotions have to be significantly bigger in order to play to the back of the room. So it's like, in a story that feels so grounded, when we're not, this obviously goes into a number, but it felt a little too much like you could hear the filmmakers behind the camera saying, oh, I'm getting so swept up in this with her. I didn't really quite get that. I do feel like there was almost too much emoting to where there was a distance that contrasted with the groundedness of the story when it's not in a musical number. Because I feel like a lot of that is the point, the contrast of it feeling grounded until it's as big as it can possibly go. And it's like, there's really no middle ground in this movie. It's either everything feels painfully real, or everything feels like practically a dream sequence, with no in-between. And so when we're kind of in the middle there, which it doesn't happen often, but when it does, it's kind of like it doesn't quite have the power one way or the other, the groundedness or the spectacle of it. And it just doesn't quite ring true for me on an emotional level anyway. So that's and I found that happening a little more with Nina than any other character, but yeah, people who realize may have no idea what I'm talking about, but um, but if you want to talk about characters that do really bring an emotional core to the whole story, um, Abuela Claudia has scenes throughout, but there's one scene in particular where she really sets herself up as kind of the heart of the movie. Where obviously it's explained to us that she's basically the godmother of the whole block or whatever. Um, but there's some scenes where she has like these really sort of quiet. Or I was talking about like the contrast of feeling grounded or really big. Her small moments really play just as well as any of the big moments, any of the big spectacle moments, where she's talking to I think it's Nina Urbanessa. I think it's Nina when she's talking about asserting your dignity in small ways and stuff like that. And it's like the small moments like that, if well executed enough, can feel just as big, even though they never, seem to be trying to be going any bigger. They're just insert this little piece of wisdom or something that you can tell is really sincere and heartfelt, and it's effective enough that it feels just as big as any of the musical numbers. And that character in particular really found those places frequently throughout and remains like the heart of the movie the whole time. Um, and we do have some cameos here. I think I've heard some people complain they might be a bit distracting, when they might be callbacks, like the when Jimmy Smith is on the phone and like the call waiting thing is "You'll be back." So, so there's that, but then there's also the fact that Lin-Manuel Miranda is in this, and he's going around and selling his ice stuff or whatever, and then he has competition with an ice cream truck, and the ice cream truck driver is Christopher Jackson, and it's like it's great to see them, especially together again, but you do get the vibe of this is basically here for the cameos. They come back after the credits as well. But as far as Anthony Ramos goes as the lead, I do. He's definitely got a likability and a presence here, but I was asking myself a lot throughout if he quite has the presence for a lead yet. Like if he can totally carry the story. And I don't know, I did find myself a lot more drawn to some of the side characters. Like Vanessa I was interested in, and Jimmy Smith's I was really interested in. There's even Mark Anthony has like one scene, and there's a lot that kind of his character seems to set up. Where it's like with just one scene, you kind of want to see more about where that character was coming from and why he makes the decisions that he makes and stuff like that. Would have been cool, but yeah, and as far as like, I don't know that I felt as attached to Kusanova as I did the others, and I don't know if that's entirely the character or if it's just that I don't know if Ramos is ready to be a full on lead in a story this big yet. I don't know, but he's obviously won a lot of people over, so I am very much probably in the minority on that. But yes, so I don't really know what else there is. Obviously, it didn't leave as much, and you would think, being me, as much of a movie-driven person as I am, and how that's very much far and away my medium of choice. It's a little surprising in retrospect to me that this didn't hit me near as hard as Hamilton did. Where like this is more of a case where I can acknowledge what makes it so good and what's really drawing people to it, but I didn't quite have that visceral feeling that I did during Hamilton. And once again, Hamilton, it was just a filmed version of the show itself. And it's like, you would think movies would have much more of like a freedom and how they can do the stuff like the turntable mantle cover and the mannequin heads and all that. And really, really take it to those really big levels. And they do, like, the whole thing where, like, the fabric is, like, coming down during, is it Vanessa's number? And all of that, but it gets super, super big. The fireworks number, all of it feels so massive in this really big, satisfying way. Um, but there was just something that wasn't quite as impactful as something like, and maybe it's unfair to, like, just at the end of the day you say it all comes down to, is it this or is it Hamilton, which I'm not trying to do, but it is kind of impossible to not compare them, even though one is a movie and one is a filmed show. It's interesting to me how much the filmed show can have more impact to me as a movie person. But I guess I don't know if I was as, like, invested in the characters as I could have been, even though I felt like I was, in the fact that they were, felt so grounded and real. Um, I don't know, I guess there was just a part of me that wasn't quite connecting this, but I may also just need to see it again. Because my biggest regret here is that our theater is still not using all their auditoriums, so things are getting pushed out really quickly. And I really, really wanted to see this in a theater, and when I had planned to go, it was like leaving that weekend. So I didn't get the chance to do that. And I am really, really hoping it comes back to theaters during this year at some point, especially if it becomes an awards player, which could happen, potentially. So I guess I should have started with this. I could have opened with this. I don't know entirely how valid my thoughts here are until if I could see this on, like, a theater screen, would be much more, yeah, satisfying. So, but all in all, I do get where people are coming from that really love it, and I wish I loved it more. But I do admire it quite a bit, especially the spectacle of it and how far it can go, while balancing the grounded nature of where the characters are coming from. So, yeah. So I guess I'm going to leave that at this, and we will continue on with all the stuff I've been catching up on and all the new releases and stuff like that, and we will go from there. So until the next thing, I think that's it.